What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here at the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, for Tad the Side. And Tad, we're coming close to it. The draft is happening next week on Thursday. We actually, surprisingly, we haven't done a good job promoting this, but we'll be doing our live stream of days 1 and 2. So, I mean, guys, we did this last year. It was tiring, but it was a ton of fun. We gave you guys a lot of great analysis going on. We had some good guests that came on as well. So the same thing will be happening this year as well. And I mean, it's going to be exciting. I think we're a little bit more prepped compared to last year, I think, comparatively, comparing the 2 years. So hopefully we should be able to produce a little bit better product compared to last year. But it's exciting times, Tad. We're really right around the corner from the draft actually being upon us.
And we're lining up guest spots for both nights as well. We have started that process. And there's a lot of scouting left to be done, but that is how in-depth we're going with this. Is there's not a single prospect that should be chosen rounds 1, 2, 3 that we do not know what we're talking about. So, look, I mean, Mel Kiper's great. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it does feel kind of like he's taking a little bit of a vacation on day 2. We do not. In fact, I would actually argue day 2 was our best day last year. So we have a lot of fun stuff planned for you guys. And if you want to get involved, that's actually my favorite part about this live stream is we take live questions. And we got to think on our feet and kind of respond to whatever questions you have. We respond directly live. I stormed off the set last year because they drafted Anthony Richardson, which has not aged well.
Yeah, so I mean, who knows what's in store for this year's live stream. But yeah, guys, please sure to tune in for that when it happens next week because, like Tad said, we welcome all the comments that you have for us. Questions live, what do you think this team's going to do? Do you think we'll get trade ups? All that stuff. Like, feel free to ask it, and we'll do our best to answer those questions as they come in. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. We're going to close out, the rest of our draft coverage before the draft starts. We got our episode today. We got an episode hopefully happening later this week, and then we will have our mock draft before the live stream. So it's like, we only have a few more episodes of draft content available. But in today's episode, Tab, we're going to be talking mainly about the corners, defensive backs, but we might be talking a little bit about secondary towards the end of the episode as well. But mainly we've been discussing those defensive backs because very similar to the wide receiver class, Tad, I think that defensive back class is pretty deep this year, that you can get yourself a pretty good corner in this year's draft class if you're looking for one. But before we get into all that, we definitely need to give a shout out to our great sponsors at Underdog Fantasy. I mean, Tad, peek behind the curtain here. Me and Tad have a side bet going on between the A's and the Cardinals series happening in Oakland.
While you're talking.
Last I saw, it was tied 1 apiece. The score, at least for today's game, Cardinals won last night, so you won that portion there. But fun fact here, Tad, speaking about underdog, but there was a dog sitting in the diamond level, the section right behind home plate in tonight's game. So, I mean, it looks like maybe they got some
that
very subtle tie-in to underdog. Like, I don't know what it is, but just like,
no, that's just Oakland.
But so that's pretty cool that I saw that happening in tonight's game. But so I mean, there's a lot of great stuff that you can be betting on right now. I mean, as we're recording, Tad, we have the first 2 play-in games for the Western Conference happening tonight. We already had the Lakers game earlier today. The Warriors game's going on right now. Tomorrow, we have the Heat. And then we also have the other games happen on. So your Heat will be playing in tomorrow's game there. So we got the 2 games for the Eastern Conference happening tomorrow. Like I talked about, we got baseball going on. The NHL playoffs are going to be starting up pretty soon. Like I said, the NFL draft, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some bets happening there as well. So guys, get into the action. All you got to do is make anywhere between 2 and 5 different prop bet picks. And the more picks you make, the more potential money you can win. You can bet across all the sports, whatever you're comfortable with. And the more picks you make, the more potential money you can win. And guys, Underdog Fantasy has gave us a promo code to share with you guys. That promo code is DESAI, DESAI. And with that promo code, you can double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. So hypothetically, if you were to put in that max amount, $500, Underdog Fantasy will match that dollar for dollar, and you can bet with up to $1,000 on their betting platform. You can use the website, you can use their mobile device applications, either on iDevices or on Android devices. So, I mean, great way to get into it. It's a lot of fun. Me and Ted use it on a pretty regular basis. It's a very easy app to use as well as website. So get in on the action. Once again, that promo code is DESAI, DESAI. You can double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500 using that promo code on the Underdog Fantasy website. So get in the action because, yeah, there's a lot of things you can be betting on. And especially like we talked about with the draft happening next week, I don't doubt that there will be some draft, prop bets as far as like, number of positions going in the first round to just overall, just like, over under, Michael Penix Jr., 15 and a half, his draft slot, like that could be a potential prop pick as well. So I mean, just like, yeah, we're looking at all that. And Tad, I think that's a good transition point here because we're talking about the corner class. It's a very deep corner class, very similar to the wide receiver class. And we brought this up in that wide receiver episode, just like, how many wide receivers did we envision going in the first round? I think we sort of came to the realization that it's like maybe we could see 6, potentially 7 receivers going in the first round. I think at least 5. But now let's sort of transition that question down here to the quarterbacks here, because I mean, it's like looking at some of the teams there, I identified like close to like 8 to 10 different teams in the first round that could go quarter in the first round. Yes, they have some other needs as well, but I was like, that's a possibility to see 8 to 10 teams that I identified to potentially go with a first round corner. So you look at that, and I could probably see like out of those 8 to 10, I could probably see like maybe half of those teams actually doing that. So you see somewhere like maybe 4 to 5 going in the first round. If you set the over under 10, like if I was like, we're talking about Underdog Fantasy. If they set an over under on Underdog Fantasy of 5.5 cornerbacks taken in the first round, cornerbacks, defensive backs, I should say specifically, I would say yes, definitely go with the under. I could see 4, I could see potentially 5. I would go with the under. If it was set at 5.5, I would go with the under at either 4 or 5. I could see that happening. But where I sort of get the like, that's where I start to second guess things is if they set it at 4.5. Because I could see 4 happening. I could potentially also see one more team grabbing one towards the end at number 5 being that 5th quarter taken off the board. So it's like I could see that happening. So it's like looking at some of the top prospects that we have here, you can see Terrion Arnold, I think he's a lock for the first round. You got Quinyon Mitchell, the guy at Toledo that we're both huge fans of. He could be a first-round draft pick. Cooper DeJean, the quarterback out of Iowa, I think he's a first-round lock. And I think Nate Wiggins is a lock as well. So I can see 4 there for sure. The real question just becomes, like I said, that's where I'm just a little bit iffy at that 4.5 is Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like, I think he unfortunately took a little bit of a hit to his stock because everybody else, like, it's not to any fault of his own. I think it's just everybody else ahead of him just shot up just a little bit during the draft process that his stock just fell just a little bit. So I could see him being like a fringe first rounder, but it also wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being one of those first picks in the very top of the second round. So that's why I really question whether if it was at a 4.5, that's where it's like, I don't know which direction I'd go. If it's at 5.5, 100% taking the under there. But just, yeah, I think for me, if you're asking me point blank, how many quarters do I think is going in the first round? I think I'm going to go with that 5. I'm leaning towards that 5. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry ends up being going one of those guys after the very end of the first round. You got teams like both San Francisco and Kansas City. They could use some upgrade of their secondary there. So, yeah, I could see that 5th team being in the first round to take Kool-Aid McKinstry. So those 5 guys go there. But, Tad, love to hear your take. What do you think about this whole conversation? How many corners do you think will go in the first round?
So here's the tough thing is corner is a lot like pass rusher now where, and we said this on the show before, where it's almost reached the point where you can't have too many corners.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, sure, I agree with you. 8 to 10 teams seems like the proper range for teams that like desperately need a corner, or not even desperately, but just could use one.
It's a priority need. Yeah, I would say it's like that is the need, but it's like probably their top 1 or 2 needs that they probably need to fill.
But even then, a team like, I don't know, the Green Bay Packers sitting in the mid-20s, if I'm sitting there and all of a sudden Quinyon Mitchell is taking a surprising fall, do I necessarily need him? No, I'm not totally set at corner, but it's not my biggest need. But at the same time, he's definitely not going to hurt the situation. So maybe we just draft most talented overall. And, some teams are already have this mindset of like, hey, whoever's at the top of our board, we're taking him. We don't care if it's a tight end, despite the fact that we just drafted 2 of them. Like, we're going to, take another tight end just because he's the best on the board. We'll figure it out later. And I think
Chicago Bears approach. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things of like, I honestly, yeah, like I said, 8 to 10 teams is a proper range reasonably, but in terms of teams that could do it, I would up it to like 12. You look at teams like the Eagles, where they have a lot of needs elsewhere, but also their secondary is really bad. So I could definitely see them, taking a corner there, especially a team like the Lions. We'll get into that later, where that roster is pretty well rounded out. So like the Lions are a perfect example of just like, oh yeah, he's still there. Okay, yeah, let's take him because they don't have any super immediate needs. So here's it's definitely not a perfect comparison, but I watched a movie that a very old movie, as it turns out, that a very old. It's about 2 decades. It was made in the mid 2000s. That a friend recommended to me, and it's reminded me a lot of that. It's called Too Big to Fail. Did you ever see that?
It sounds familiar, but I really don't remember what it's about.
Do you remember when HBO used to make their own movies?
Yes.
Yeah, it was from that era.
Okay.
And it was William Hurt as the U.S. Treasury Secretary, based on a true story of the '08 financial crisis, which already just aged out about half our audience. And the Treasury Secretary's whole dilemma here was he had to keep banks afloat before people made a run on their money. Like, he had to keep people away from like running there and grabbing their money and running because he knew the entire market would collapse if that happened. I think this is what determines the over-under with cornerbacks. Will there be a run on them in the top 20? And so let me explain real quick. So essentially, what my theory is what's going to determine whether or not we hit that over or under at 5.5 is if 3 or more, I doubt more, but 2 or more. Let's lower to 2 or more. If 2 or more corners go in the top 20, I think you'll see a run on cornerbacks in that 20 to 30 range. And I think that will include teams trading up to go get their guys because all of a sudden they're afraid, oh my God, corners are flying off the board. We need to go get our guy. But if only one corner goes in the top 20, say Terrion Arnold, who I think is the only safe bet to go top 20. You said, oh, he's totally going to go in the first round. Yes, he's totally going to go in the top 20. If Terrion Arnold's the only one that goes in the top 20, I think we hit that under. Because a lot of teams are going to be sitting there going, okay, well, we'll just wait till the second round. When A, you have more time to negotiate a trade because, you have a whole day in between. And B, you have less of an asking price to trade up in the top of the second round compared to trading up in the 20s of the first round. But
True.
Let's say Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, and Cooper DeJean all go in the top 20. I think all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of teams panicking, going, oh my God, my guy's not going to be there tomorrow. You hear the sirens going off right now.
Exactly.
The sirens,
you got to send out the paramedics because, this is an emergency situation. All the corners are leaving. Get into it and get your guys in the first round.
This has happened. Our viewers probably think I live in the ghetto. This is terrible. But point being is, those alarm bells will be sounding in draft rooms. If at 19, for whatever reason, the Rams go, let's take Cooper DeJean. Like, that's what's going to be happening in a lot of war rooms. And I think that's going to be the ultimate decider of what goes over or under is, do we get an early run of cornerbacks? And so that's going to be fascinating to keep an eye on. And it will be fascinating, not to tell you I rip off our sponsors, but I'm telling you, around that 18 to 21 range, I'm keeping my eye on underdogs odds because they do change live. They're just like any other betting site where they change live. If we're at 20 and 3 corners have gone, I'm taking that over real quick because I think there will be, just like in '08, the fear was everyone's going to be busting ATMs. Well, all of a sudden, New England's going to be taking a sledgehammer to that cornerback, market and going for their guy. So I use cornerback ATM, but I'm not sure if
I don't think that quite worked to your effectiveness.
I'm trying to get the metaphor going.
No, I got it. I understood it.
The bottom line is I think that I could see it really going either way. but I really think it's going to be one of those night of things that we're really anticipating, because another thing to anticipate is Minnesota is going to trade up. And it depends who they trade up for. If they trade with New England, I don't see New England prioritizing cornerback. That's not a massive need for them. But if they trade with, let's say, the New York Giants, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, corner is actually a fairly big need for the Giants. And so now it's just those kind of like live reaction things, which is why you should watch our live stream, because we can keep you in hold. And in fact, speaking of the live stream, you can also see Cap make his second guest appearance on the live stream. So point being is, I think that it's largely situational, but I could see it swinging either way, and wouldn't surprise me either way, because this class is the most loaded class in the entire draft. Receiver be damned, because we were talking about this. Receivers, that was a discussion.
Swing it either way, just like Cap's tail. Like that's what's going to happen in the first round.
Exactly. Like it could go up, it could go down. We don't know. Exactly. Please don't bite me. But like receivers, we were talking, they're what, 3 in tier 1? If we did tier discussion with corners, probably 4 in tier 1 for me at the minimum. So this, I think this cornerback class is the most loaded in the entire draft. So it's just, once that first domino falls, I think the entire thing is just going to be an avalanche at that point.
Interesting. So yeah, I think I understand your argument there, but I guess for me, I'm seeing that right as soon as we get into the double digits, that's where I think teams are going to start considering taking a quarter, because that's what I was sort of analyzing. I was going through the first round. I was like looking at all those teams. I was like, okay, I really think maybe this is a bold prediction. Maybe this is a hot take, but I sort of see it this way, that just like, based on our past discussions on the podcast here, but just, I don't see a quarter going in the first 10 picks. I think it's going to be, we see a lot of quarterbacks. We see some offensive linemen. I think we're both in agreement that Atlanta's probably going to go pass rush, whether that's Dallas Turner or Jared Verse, whoever it is. But just like, I really don't see any of those teams in the top 10 unless we get a trade up. Like, we obviously sort of facilitating here with like, Minnesota being in play. Denver possibly might be in play. Las Vegas could possibly be in play as well. Like that could possibly affect things. But even with that, I don't see a corner going in the top 10. And so once we get to like 11 and 12, Denver's there at 12. You obviously got the Raiders at 13. That's where I could see now teams are going to start considering quarters. And so for me, I think within that top 20, I could see at least 2 going. So based on your logic, I'd still stick with my sort of, feeling there. That's like, I got 5 quarters going in the first round. Now, Tad, before you give your take here, I kind of want to transition into our next segment here, because I think it sort of fits perfectly here. That just like, let's talk about team fits. And I think it's just naturally we see here, like I said, I talked about the Broncos there at 12. I talked about the Raiders there at 13. We got your Colts at 15. It's like I got 3 teams right there in the top 20 that I think could use a corner as far as shoring up their defense and could use to anchor the back end of their defense for sure. So it's like, that's where I see already, like I said, I already got 3 teams potentially that have a need at quarter that could take one. And like I said, that could lead to that, 5 quarters being taken in the first round. So before we actually get to the team fits, I think you had a closing statement as far as just like, how many quarters in the first round?
Well, you're also, I think you're underestimating the craziness of those teams. I don't know if you remember last year, man, there were a lot of trades in those, the 10 to 20 range, because the asking price for obviously top 10, it drops quite significantly once you get into quote unquote the mid first round. And I think that this is
just like Cap jumping right back in. It's like teams will be willing to jump into the middle of the first round, but not the top.
Right, randomly interrupt everything, and all of a sudden everything goes to shit. So I think that you need to factor that in. Of like, I agree with you. I don't think a corner is going to go top 10, but I think that this is going to be such a wild night, which is why I'm so excited for it. I think this is going to be such a wild night that it's just, when is that run going to start? Because I could definitely see, you brought them up, I could see the Raiders being a very interesting kind of first team to start this, because the quarterback they don't love, I don't really get the – I feel like a report would have leaked by now. Hey, the Raiders really like Michael Penix. The Raiders really like Bo Nix. I don't think the Raiders are going to go quarterback in the first round. And so – yeah, and so I think that corner is a very real possibility, because their secondary is terrible. Other than Merrick, because he's amazing, best safety ever. But other than him, their secondary is awful. So it wouldn't surprise me if I almost said Oakland. Sorry, PTSD, buddy. But it wouldn't surprise me if Vegas is the first team that takes a corner there. And then once again, that run starts because I'm telling you, someone in that 15-20 range is going to go corner as well. All of a sudden, we're at 2. And then it just takes one crazy team to trade up for one guy that they're scared, especially because those early 20s, a corner is going to go there too. So it's just how much do these teams value these cornerbacks is the real question.
So speaking of crazy teams, I think that's a good way to sort of lead off this next segment because we both picked the Colts for a team fit here. We have 2 different prospects. So I'm going to let you speak about your prospect first here with your team, and then we'll get into mine. So Tad, for the Colts, who do you think will the Indianapolis Colts take there at 15, unless you have a different scenario planned out?
I'll get to that. So, with the Colts is interesting because you have to remember this is not Eberflus's team anymore. Eberflus loved to play a very man-heavy scheme, which is why they re-signed Jalen Johnson for $80 million. How much did that guy get paid?
Something like that. He got good.
He got paid a lot, but it's because his man-to-man coverage is so strong, and Eberflus's system is great. I'm not going to say anything bad about his defensive system. He's a terrible head coach, but very, very good defensive coordinator. Now they brought in, do you know who the Colts defensive coordinator is now?
I don't.
It's Gus Bradley.
Gus Bradley. Good old Gus Bradley.
Good old Gus Bradley. He's still hanging around. So Gus Bradley is now the defensive coordinator in Indianapolis. So I was really thinking okay, because quarterback is a big need. And this is my favorite thing is when we re-signed Kenny Moore, which is something I did not think was going to happen. What was the one thing that the headlines kept popping up, and I was legitimately laughing at this, was Colts re-signed star nickel corner Kenny Moore. Those were all the headlines, making it very clear that they did not re-sign star corner, but star nickel corner.
Yes,
and they're not exactly wrong. He's a very good secondary corner. In my opinion, probably the best secondary corner, second string corner, I guess is the best way to put it. Second string corner in the league. He's not number one, nor will he ever be. And that's fine. He carved out a very good niche for himself and obviously got paid for it. We needed that number one guy. And so with Gus Bradley, and you will know this well as a 49ers fan, that man lives and dies by the cover 3.
It's true.
Very true. For the uninitiated, football junkies, first off, congratulations on having a life. I really want that one day. Cover 3 mostly plays a secondary, whether it's safety or corner, in a medium to deep zone coverage. And that's why the Legion of Boom was so strong, is because when you get these really athletic secondary players and you put them deep, it allows you to open up more pressure by blitzing linebackers, blitzing extra DBs. It just opens up a lot more possibilities. But you need a guy who can cover a hell of a lot of field, because if you don't have that, all of a sudden your secondary is very vulnerable. Who better than the fastest corner in this year's draft, and Cooper DeJean? Cooper DeJean is the perfect fit for Gus Bradley's cover 3 defense because, okay, let's assume he, kind of adapts a little slowly to the corner, because I feel like wide receivers and corners are the 2 hardest positions to kind of transition to quickly in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, Cooper DeJean's fast enough. He'll make a pretty solid safety. So fuck it. Just plug him in for the deep coverage. That dude's fast enough to run sideline to sidelines 3 times in one play. I truly believe that. So I think he's just such a perfect fit for that. In terms of A, his speed, and B, his ability to understand the game. You watch Cooper DeJean's tape, he has a very good instinctive feel for the game, which is what you really want to see out of a corner. And on top of all this, am I saying Cooper DeJean is the Colts' number 1 priority? No. But from everything I've been reading the past couple of days, I don't know if you've been seeing these reports, Colts are gearing up for something. I don't know what it is.
No, I don't stay up to date with the Colts probably as heavily as you do. So yeah, this is actually used to be.
Several reports are that Chris Ballard is gearing up for a trade up. No one knows if it's for Brock Bowers, if it's for Odunze, if it's for Neighbors. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that one, but I've read several reports that he's gearing up for a trade up. And it's funny. So Pete Schrager of the NFL Network, who is very well known to be very well connected, only just, it was either today or yesterday as of recording, released his first mock draft. And the reason he waits is because he collects all these sources and asks, hey, what's actually going to happen? So how often do you see a 1.0 mock draft in April?
It's true. It's very true.
So he just released his mock draft, and in his mock draft, it had the Colts trading up to 9 with the Bears. Take Malik Neighbors.
Interesting.
It
Okay.
would be interesting.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure how I would react to that, but we'll see on draft night. Point being, though, is I think that the Colts are targeting a receiving threat. Now, if that doesn't happen, obviously you need a plan B. Any good GM has a plan B in case everything goes to shit. Cooper DeJean is the perfect plan B. Let's say Malik Neighbors, I don't know, for whatever reason goes to the Titans. Let's say the Titans take him at what? Where are they at? 7, 6,
7. Mm-hmm.
7? Okay. So let's say the Titans take Neighbors at 7. So Harrison Jr. is off the board. Neighbors is off the board. You don't quite love Brock Bowers enough to give up next year's first round pick to do it. So you're sitting there at 15. Brock Bowers is gone at 15. Let's say the Jets take him at 11. Cooper DeJean is the perfect backup plan. He should and probably is their backup plan. Like, do not be shocked at that. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Is I'm telling you, there's going to be a shocking cornerback selection in the teens that no one sees coming, and it's going to start a run. I'm telling you.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know about the whole trade up situation. Like, that would be very interesting if they do decide to trade up.
Let me have this.
Like, I mean, but like I said, I believe you. I'm not saying I'm denying anything that you said, but just like I said, that's just not anything that I have heard or seen on socials. But it's just like, yeah, that could be very much like a very insider thing, like only regional to Indianapolis and the Indianapolis sort of like media center situation there. So it's like, yeah, maybe they're keeping it very tight-lipped as far as their potential plans for the draft. So I mean, yeah, that would be exciting to potentially add another receiving threat to that group there to give up with to pair up, with Anthony Richardson. But yeah, I think in my scenario, I don't think they get that aggressive. I think they stay there at 15. I also think they go quarter there for sure. Obviously, that's why I had the team here in today's episode. But I don't think they go Cooper DeJean. I think they actually go like everything that you laid out with a cover 3. What was Richard Sherman good at? He was good at being a physical quarter. He was a smart quarter. He was willing to stick on to the number 1 receiver. Trash talk for sure. I don't doubt that maybe this quarter can also do that as well. We'll see about that. But I think the Indianapolis Colts, they're not afraid to also go with small school prospects that they believe in. You look at Darius Leonard out of South Carolina State. Nobody saw that coming, but they took him in the second round. He ended up being a very good fit for them for a long time. Eventually, until he dealt with the injuries, they let him go. So I'm going to go with Quinyon Mitchell here.
I love it.
Going to the Indianapolis Colts. And I think just, everything that you laid out with the cover 3, that completely makes a ton of sense. I agree with all that, but I still think they need that number 1 guy that can sort of lock up the opposing number 1 receiver for them. Very similar, like we talked about with the Legion of Boom, with Richard Sherman doing that, and then everybody else took care of the rest of the field. And like I said, that allowed the blitzes and all the other things to sort of work in their favor. So I think in this case, you get a guy, Quinyon Mitchell. Like you said, Cooper DeJean is probably one of the fastest quarters. I think Quinyon Mitchell is like right there, probably like a 1A situation. Like, he's a very fast quarter. We talked about just, whether he was going to be able to like handle the bigger boys, being able to handle the tougher talent because he played in the MAC. But we talked about this during the Senior Bowl, and we talked about this during the Combine as well, that just like he continued to perform at every single stop that he went along the way, and he was able to hold his own against some of the tougher competition, against some of the, premier prospects in this year's draft class at the receiver position. So it's like, I have no doubt that once he gets to the NFL, like, yeah, there may be a little bit of growing pains, but overall, it's not going to be that much of a issue for Quinyon Mitchell to sort of allow himself to set himself apart as being, the top corner in the Colts' secondary there. So you look at their, front 7, that's probably one of their stronger parts of their defense. The secondary could use some issues. I know they signed Kenny Moore. Julian Blackman's a good piece as well. But
and like I said, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
that's the thing.
It's your team. I will not hesitate any interruptions.
They don't have that true number 1. That's why I was laughing at all the headlines making that very clear of like, hey, they re-signed their number 2 guy. Well, who's their number 1 guy? They don't have one.
Yeah.
It's just like, he's not there. And it's one of those things. And I can't even remember. I mean, Vontae Davis, RIP, by the way. Maybe he was the last time the Colts had a true number 1 cornerback. It's been quite a while.
It's very true. Cause I mean, they did sign Stephon Gilmore, I think a couple seasons ago, but I think he was
one solid season, but then he was out.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, it's just like it was a little bit past his prime. He wasn't the defensive player of the year, Stephon Gilmore. He was
good.
Still good, very good. But just that shutdown core that you're looking for, it just wasn't that guy. And obviously, he moved on, so he's not there anymore. But I think you get a guy like Mitchell, you get him there at 15. I think this is a guy that can be your potential new number one shutdown corner. I mean, just like looking at his tape, it's just like you see he's just very intelligent, like you said. So it's like he's got that recognition skills that you want with a premier corner. Very much just blanketed every receiver that he played against. Like, I mean, there was very little instances where I saw a receiver able to get separation consistently against Quinyon Mitchell. It's just like he was very good. He attacked the ball in the air. He was contesting a lot of passes, a lot of pass defenses as well. So I mean, just like this is a guy, even though going to a small school, like we talked about, that's like, you know, some scouts sort of look at the helmet as far as the logo on the helmet and they sort of get scared away by some of the ones that just like, this is not a premier school like Alabama or Ohio State. So I'm a little bit hesitant. So I could see a situation where Terrion Arnold ends up going ahead of him. Or, like I said, I could envision a scenario where Quinyon Mitchell is the first corner off the board. But because a lot of people are hesitant, like I said, we talked about the Broncos, talked about the Raiders, some teams ahead of the Colts, ahead of 15, they may be a little bit hesitant to go corner or go get the smaller school guy. I don't think the Colts are afraid of that. They want the number one corner. This is my number one corner in this year's draft class. And I think he'll be the guy that I think just, sets a new, standard for that secondary there in Indianapolis. So Quinyon Mitchell to the Colts, I like that one.
I love it. And the only reason I don't agree with it is I think he's going to be gone by 15.
It could be a situation where that happens. I 100% could see that happening. But yeah, I think if he's there, that's a great pick. That would be a fantastic.
Oh, 100%. That would be an A+. Because I actually I'm with you. I like Quinyon Mitchell more than, I mean, even Terrion Arnold may be, screw you, Al. Even Terrion Arnold may be my number 2 corner. I'm with you. I haven't quite made up my mind there yet. But yeah, those rankings are going to be tough. Because Terrion Arnold, there are some little things there. And plus, and I know I shouldn't do this. I know I rail on people who do this. But Alabama corners have a very streaky history in the NFL. So yeah, no, there's a good chance that Mitchell ends up as my number 1 corner as well. But like I said, I really think, as much as I hate to say it, I think Mitchell's going to be a Raider.
Interesting. So yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. Speaking of the Raiders, I mean, just what's another team that you think could have a good team fit here? Whether in the first round, maybe the second round, maybe even later than that. I don't know how deep you're going to go here, but just give me another team fit that you like in the corner position.
You were talking about crazy teams. Let's talk about a crazy team with a crazy ass coach. That is the Detroit Lions, sitting there pretty at number 29. Like I said before, they have carte blanche. Like, basically, if I'm the Lions, I'm not trying to trade up or really anything unless there's a really shocking fall that happens next week. But if I'm there, I'm just like, all right, who's ever best available, we'll just let him fall to us. And I think that you combine crazy good team with crazy coach with crazy good athlete and Nate Wiggins to the Detroit Lions. I think that's perfect because, I mean, Nate Wiggins, I've talked about him before on the show where the really only big problem I have with him is he's not a great press corner. But what better guy to teach a corner how to be aggressive up on the line than Dan Campbell? I know he played tight end, but really that guy is a two-way coach. Like I totally trust that guy to coach on my defense. And let's assume Dan Campbell can't do it. Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator in Detroit.
Fantastic defensive coordinator. Yeah.
Fantastic at developing talent. You see what he did all across the...
He's a former defensive back in the league. So, I mean, yeah, of course he's going to be able to do it.
Well, and I believe it. You know why? Because, again, he develops talent and not even develops talent, but knows how to handle talent. And I'll explain what that means in a second. Where you look at Aiden Hutchinson is almost immediately became... Aiden Hutchinson was what everyone thought Chase Young would be. Except for he actually panned out. Sorry, buddy. But
all right.
Where is he now, Chase Young? By the way,
he's in New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah.
Is Cameron Jordan still there?
He is still there.
Low key. That's actually kind of solid. But
anyway, it works out.
But bottom line being is Aiden Hutchinson is what everyone thought that Chase Young was going to be. So we know Aaron Glenn can develop defensive linemen, and let's not forget this man. Pretty much single-handedly, double-handedly because it takes the player himself, revived C.J. Gardner-Johnson's career. That man was not being signed by anybody, and then he just went back to the Eagles for a boatload of money after the Eagles just kicked him straight to the curb. And the Lions were like, yeah, we can use you. And then, of course, he did great for him. So Aaron Glenn can utilize talent very well across the board. And Nate Wiggins, like I said, other than his press coverage issues, he might be the most athletic corner in this year's class. Not best, but most athletic. There's a lot to work with. He's a great building block of a corner. And so I think that should he go to Detroit where they had, let me ask you this, Mer. Let's play your favorite game. Over under. How many passing yards per game did the Lions allow last year? Over under 250.
Over under 250. Um, they were good, but I don't think they were that good. So I'm gonna go with over.
You sure they were good?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with over.
They were not. It's under. They allowed 247 passing yards per game, which sounds better than it does, but it turns out that's tied for 27th in the league.
Yeah, that's not that great. Then.
No, that's really not that great. So that's what I mean by like, is corner a glaring need for them? No, they had a lot of injuries in the secondary this past year. There are a lot of excuses you can come up with, but the secondary needs work. And so you put Nate Wiggins there in a position where he's under no immediate pressure to really develop. And then, he's a crazy athlete, and we've seen what Detroit can do with crazy athletes in St. Brown, Hutchinson, and now add Wiggins to that mix. It's a very, very good get at the bottom of the first round.
Yeah, that would be a great addition. I think that's one of the few things that they could probably add to their team. Like, when you're picking towards the end of the first round, it's like you got a pretty complete roster, so there's not too many holes that you need to sort of fill there. But yeah, so you add a guy like him to sort of shore up your first take your first round pick and sort of shore up your defense that way, shore up your secondary. I think it's a really good pick there with Nate Wiggins for sure. Burner as well. Like, I mean, we talked about his speed as well too. So it's like, yeah, that's a lot that you can use in your secondary there for sure.
For the first time in franchise history, the Lions have what I call the Ravens luxury. And what the Ravens luxury is who do we want to take? Not who do we need to take? Who looks good? Like who can we take and we'll figure it out down the road. For the first time in franchise history, the Lions had that luxury. And so I think that Higgins is a great guy at 29, which is essentially a glorified second round pick. Higgins is just such a freak athlete that at that point, yeah, that's perfect.
Wiggins, not Higgins.
I said Wiggins.
No, you said Higgins twice. So
I said Wiggins. Check the tape.
Unless you're doing like a Stewie Griffin, Wiggins. Like, if you're doing that, then I can't account for that. But yeah, you said
cool Wiggins.
Nate Wiggins. So
cool. Say Wiggins. Wiggins.
I'm gonna go to the bottom of the first round as well. I think there's a team there that has surprisingly, like we're sort of talking about, teams at the very bottom of the first round that they have sort of complete rosters, not too many holes. But this team surprisingly has a glaring hole at the quarter position because they traded L'Jarius Sneed to a rival team in the AFC South, the Tennessee Titans. There,
screw you, by the way, not you, the Chiefs.
Yeah, of course. So I could see the Kansas City Chiefs very much being in play for a quarter here. And like I talked about, where it's like, are we deciding between, for me, 4 or 5 quarters being taken in the first round? I think the very 5th quarter taken in the first round will be by Kansas City. And I think that quarter will be Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think he lands with the Kansas City Chiefs there with that very final pick in the first round. Like I said, it's not surprising they don't have too many holes on the rest of their roster, but just, like I said, with this trade of L'Jarius Sneed, that opens up things as far as they need to fill a hole there. And I think this is a very good position for them to get a quarter in the first round. Like I said, I've kind of already talked about it, where it's just like he has a lot of skills that you like as far as being a corner. Just unfortunately, because everybody else just has been performing well during the off season, the draft season here, and just he's been like, sort of maintaining his stock. That sort of dropped him all the way to 5. Otherwise, there's a very relevant situation where it's like if he was in a different draft class, he could be the first or second quarter taken off the board. During the preseason, he was a lot of people's first quarter taken off the board. Yeah. But then, now you had the emergence, obviously, with that final college season that we had in 2023. And then you had the draft off season as well that just sort of like improves the stock for other guys. So just unfortunately, he fell victim to that. But I think there's a lot that he can offer being a number 1 quarter for a team, or maybe even being the number 2 quarter in Kansas City, however they want to do it. But just like he could be an immediate contributor for them. He'll be that 5th quarter taken in the first round. The only knock on him that I see, like he's got great intelligence. He's got great coverage skills. He could be a cover quarter or he could be a press man quarter, either way you want to do it. He doesn't have that elite speed. Like all the guys that we talked about before him, Quinyon Mitchell, Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, these are all burners. That's like if there's a guy that gets past him, they have that catch-up speed to catch up with him. Fortunately, on the tape that I saw with Kool-Aid and McKinstry, like if there's a guy that got the best of him and got deep on him, he's like, yeah, he can't catch up with him, unfortunately. So that was one of the knocks that I saw. Also in those situations too, he tends to get a little bit of grabby in case the throw was not perfect, and it sort of like gets a little bit underthrown, and the receiver has to come back for it. That allows the quarter to catch up to it, but then he gets a little bit too handsy at times, a little bit too physical with the receiver to play catch up. That I think resulted in a lot of penalties. There's a lot of situations where I think in the NFL, especially going into a more of a pass first league, he can get a lot of flags thrown in his direction if he's getting a little too handsy. But I think overall, he's got a skill set that you would like. I think there's a lot that you can work on. And like I said, I think he values being a first round quarter, but just, yeah, I think at the very end of the first round, Kansas City has a hole. I think he could be still a very good first round premier shutdown quarter for you. It's a match made in heaven. It just, yeah, he becomes my fifth quarter off the board in the first round, going to the Kansas City Chiefs at 32. And I would hate that. Like, I mean, just they have no holes, and then they get a premier quarter at the very end of the first round.
Luxury.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, that is the luxury that they have. So yeah, I would hate it, but it's also just a very good fit too.
Well, one thing I really like about that fit is the thing that made L'Jarius Sneed so good is he knew when to be physical at the right times, right? He wasn't too handsy in the corner that was drawing unnecessary PI calls. He wasn't Pac-Man Jones, for example. Screw you for getting that in the trivia yet again, by the way. But like he knew when it was okay, or like how to kind of play the game where you're a very physical corner that can bug the shit out of receivers. Sure. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, while not at that level quite yet, obviously if he was, he'd be going top 10.
I agree. Yeah.
He has traces of that. He is a very physical corner. Maybe I would argue, man, Mitchell might have him there because Mitchell's a pretty physical corner. Bottom line being is McKinstry is, I think, either the second or third, or maybe even first. There's an argument to be made there for the most physical corner in this year's class. So he does fit a similar role to Sneed. I'm not going to say he's going to He's going to step up. I was combining Sneed and step. Shut up. He's going to step up to that level right away. I did that one on purpose. Shut up.
I know.
But I think so. It's kind of like what I said in our last episode about another player. Is he at that Finassi level yet? No, but I think he could get to Finassi eventually. So especially at 32, that would be a very, very, very good pick. And I'm just happy we're back at 32 picks. Damn it, Dolphins!
Yeah, all 32 picks happening this year for sure. So yeah, those are some of our key fits there. But let's sort of close this out with the way that we sort of closed out lots of our other position episodes that we sort of discussed. And let's just sort of talk about some sleepers here. So whether that's at, you notice, if you're watching us on YouTube, we put defensive backs here because this is where we want to talk about potential of like some safeties as well. Because we talked about this in a previous episode that just safety class is not all that great this year. So, I mean, we weren't going to dedicate a whole episode to it, but we will have position rankings for it. You see the social media handles coming right down below.
Always get it on
Follow us on all those social media handles. We're dropping all the position graphics for you. So we will have a position graphic for the safeties, but overall, there wasn't enough that we wanted to dedicate a full episode here too. But maybe we're going to discuss a couple here in the sleeper section here. Ted, why don't you give us your pick here at either quarter or safety, just a sleeper that you like it.
This guy is funny because he may be my number one safety by the time the rankings come out. But the problem is this is such a loaded draft class. And I know I keep saying this, but it's just true. This is such a loaded draft class that he is kind of a sleeper because I think in a quote unquote normal talented draft class, he would be in talks of potentially like mid first round, but definitely he would sneak into the first round. He might slip all the way to the mid-second round, so he's a sleeper in my book, and that is Miami safety Cameron Kitchens. Now, it's not Kitchens, it's Kitchens.
Yep, Kitchens.
K-I-N. So, I mean, I'm glad you brought this up with Kool-Aid, where it's, you look at those preseason mock drafts. Kitchens was a very popularly mocked safety in that mid to first round range, and I think, and here's the funny thing, his draft stock fall really wasn't his fault, or all his fault, I should say. Is I think like every year you see this where there's a really good player that's really hyped up and just doesn't quite produce. Not that he didn't produce, and I'll get in that in a bit, but doesn't quite produce, and then his team tanks. I feel like you often see that with quarterbacks where, this quarterback's going to go top 10, and all of a sudden he drops down to, Spencer Rattler is a great example of this. You remember when he was at Oklahoma and everyone was like, all right, he's the future number 1 overall pick.
Yep. Yep.
Now that he's in the draft, finally, we're like, maybe second round. And so it happens to a lot of people, but Kitchens is like, he's incredible. The more I watched of his tape, and I really liked him going into this year, but then I really watched his tape in preparation for this episode. This is not my pro comp before you roll your eyes, but he did remind me in his play style a lot of Bob Sanders and the way that he is.
Okay.
That dude is a heat-seeking fucking missile. And here's why I like him is he's less self-destructed than Bob Sanders. That was Bob Sanders' whole problem, was just like, just look at my shoulder, worth it. It's like, no. We need you for the next 4 weeks. Kitchens does a good job of, preserving his own body. Like, he's not like this guy's going to get ejected every other play type of guy, but he's still super aggressive. Now, that is partially why his draft stock has fallen, is because that aggressiveness can be a big time weakness, especially in man coverage. He's not good at man coverage. Just to show that I am being unbiased here. That man, like, if you run a stop and go against him, you're going to win. I could do it. I run probably like a 5.6 40 because he's just like, he wants that pick so bad. But you know what? I want that mentality in a safety. I want that. I want the ball kind of safety. It's it's John Favreau. I forgot his character's name in the Replacements.
Danny Bateman. Danny Bateman
was, are you gonna give me the ball? I'm gonna get you the ball. Go give me the ball. Like, that is Kitchens to a T, where he just wants to make that big play. And in most cases it works, but when it doesn't, it really busts. And that's going to be a big problem in the NFL. But honestly, I feel like that's a pretty fixable problem in the NFL, because all you need is a good secondary coach to chew you out a couple times before you really start learning your lesson. And then you look at his production this past year. It's crazy. He had 5 picks, 5 broken passes, 59 tackles, and a sack. Pretty solid, right?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
How about this? He missed 2 games.
That's not bad. That's not bad then at all. That's pretty good. I like that.
And another reason the stock is falling, I love this so much, is, as our viewers and listeners know, is I do look at the scouting reports. I don't let it affect my opinion, but I do look at them. And one thing that I was cracking up at is on NFL.com, one of the things is, didn't have a great combine. It's negative. I could give a shit. I felt like Jamal Mondney. Is I was like, I don't care that I ran at 4.6 of the combine. Yeah, that's not great. But if you look at his tape, he clearly plays much faster than that. So he's just one of those guys that he has nose for the ball. He wants to make that play for his team. He just has that it factor of safety. And it was funny because it reminded me a lot, and this is my pro comp, is I remember one of the very first drafts I was ever obsessed with is there was a safety I was so mad I didn't scout because I was watching his highlights after he got drafted in the second round. I want to see if you can guess who this is. And he just seemed like a ball hawk, kind of a team player, not the hardest hitter in the world, but like still a pretty aggressive safety who just seemed like a perfect kind of like athlete to be in the back of the field, play essentially center field for the defense. And this guy went on to have a pretty good NFL career. He was drafted in the second round about a decade ago out of Oregon to the New England Patriots. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Patrick Chung.
That is my pro comp. Is I think that Cameron Kitchens is a harder hitting Patrick Chung. And I think that is a perfect fit because I do see him going around the mid-second round, exactly where Patrick Chung went.
Yeah, I think unfortunately just, the safety class is just going to take a hit because all the other position groups have so much talent in them.
Plus, is there so many corners too where it's like, screw it. Technically he's a corner, but we'll just kick him at safety in the meantime. Yeah. So that could like cloud the safety pool as well.
No, I agree with that. But I think just, looking at the safety class, I think there just wasn't a lot of huge talent that we were liking. So I think just naturally because of that, and like I said, because there's such an influx of talent at all the other position groups, safeties are going to slide to the second round. So it's like, even a guy that, is showing good tape from Kitchens there at Miami, it's like, even though he's probably the first safety off the board, it's still not going to happen until the second round. It's like very similar to the running back position we talked about. That's just like, fortunately, it's just been a devalued position. And I think, that's going to slide the second round as well. So it's like, you got guys like Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks or whatever, but they're going to go the second round on day 2 instead of day 1, like in, probably 10 years ago.
Honestly, how about this for a hot take? It would not shock me the Bills took Kitchens at the end of the first round.
They need a safety.
they have a desperate need at safety.
They have a hole out a lot of their secondary, so it's like, yeah, they could use an upgrade anywhere because they took a bunch of cost-cutting measures and they let a lot of, very good veterans go. Benefit to the Rams, obviously, they signed Tre'Davious White, so I mean that's good for them. But just, yeah, unfortunately, I think, I can see that. He's with Miami.
Miami, okay.
Yeah, so going to a division rival there. So I mean, yeah, I 100% can see the
Rams
Buffalo
really did a
Bills.
good job of beefing up their secondary.
So I 100% can see the Buffalo Bills in play for secondary. I could see that they're one of the teams that I considered to possibly be at the end of the first round instead of going receiver because the Stephon Diggs trade. Maybe they go quarter instead. So it's like, yeah, there's a possibility that there's a position there. They go in the first round as well.
Cooper,
but just, yeah,
Cooper DeJean to the Bills. Woo!
It could happen. I think in my initial mock draft that we did back in March, I had the Bills trading up for Cooper DeJean to use.
At that point, just make him a two-way player and play him a receiver too, because you need that. Like, just
could happen. Could happen. But just
we're out there running, coach. Just up. Just go up.
I'm going to stick with the quarter position for my safety here. I'm going to go to the University of Louisville. I'm going to go with Jarvis Brownlee Jr. So, Tad, I don't know if you've heard of this guy. I don't know if you've seen any of his tape.
Him. I've not watched any of his tape.
But yeah, when I was watching him at the combine, once again, it's just like my process of going through the combine is I watch a bunch of these prospects and I was just like, I never heard of this guy, but he's looking really good through the combine. I'm going to come and check next to him to watch more tape of him. So that's exactly what I did with Brownlee. And it's just like, we're talking about physical quarters. Like, this is a diamond that you can get probably on day 3. I can see him going at the very top end of day 3. So probably in round 4. Maybe there's a chance he goes in round 3 as a possibility, but just, yeah, 3 or 4, I see his range there. But physical quarter, like, I mean, the receivers that were going against him, they had to work that much harder to get past him or use these extra moves or, use sharper routes to sort of get past him or whatever, because he was just always on the opposing receiver. Very similar to what we're talking about, Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's not a fast quarter, but he does rely more on his intelligence to sort of get into the mirroring the receiver's routes and sticking with the receiver. But yeah, if you got a faster, like, a Tyreek Hill or, a Donnie Mitchell or, Xavier Worthy, obviously, it's like they're going to burn this guy pretty easily and he will have a hard time trying to make up that catch-up speed. But if you're able to sort of keep him in front of, if he's able to keep the receivers in front of him, he's able to lock up the receivers there. Plays aggressively. So it's like, I mean, I think there's a lot of chances where it's like he's willing to sort of undercut routes to try and make a turnover. He's willing to sort of be aggressive towards the ball to force some turnovers, deflect some passes. But obviously with that, you do get the other side of it where it's like, if you're too aggressive, the receivers are able to sort of make a play. They'll get a big chunk gain yardage on him. So he's very sort of like, he toes the line with that. So it's like sometimes he's pretty aggressive, but there are times where I think he gets the best of it. But I think over the course of the season, he was sort of like, balancing that out. And I think that's something that he could easily remedy once he gets to the NFL level. Coaches can sort of look at it and be like, all right, this is a situation where you can be aggressive. This is a situation where you don't not to be. So I think he could sort of learn to develop that and be a lot better there. Reeds plays well. So I think because of that, he also plays the run game pretty well as well. So he goes after the ball carrier, willing to get in there, make a tackle as well. So he's not one of those guys that's just going to sit back and let the other guys sort of make the play, because that's another knock on Kool-Aid McKinstry. That's like, he's let his other teammates go in and then he goes and he's a cleanup guy. He's not the guy who's going to be the first one in there to make the tackle, but he's the cleanup guy. Whereas with Jarvis Brownlee, I saw there's a lot of times that he wasn't afraid to get in there, mix it up, and really be the primary ball tackler there to get the ball carrier down on the field. Little undersized, and I think with his physical play, he'll probably shift more to a nickel quarter as opposed to being an outside quarter that he was in college. But I think there's a lot to like there, especially with, being in a pass-first league. We need more nickel quarters, need more slot quarters as well. So I think Jarvis Brownlee, can fit that role pretty well. But just, yeah, a lot that I like about this guy. He will be a find in the later rounds. Like I said, I'm seeing somewhere like maybe in the middle of the 3rd to like the top of the 4th that I see for this guy.
So for those of our YouTube viewers, I was like, what is Tad looking at? I'm trying to remember. This is it. That's it right there. Is obviously the most obvious example of Louisville. It's Louisville, by the way. Say it with me. Louisville.
I said it. I said Louisville.
No, you said Louisville.
No, I said Louisville.
No, you did not. It's Louisville.
I did. Just like you said Nate Higgins. I said Louisville.
You're swallowing your own tongue. Louisville. And I am playing back the tape on that, and I will laugh in your face.
Okay.
Or I will never bring it up again. But point being,
that's more likely.
No, what you were saying reminded me a lot of, and I'll own this, is the last Louisville. corner that I remember really fast rising up the ranks, and this what reminded me of him is your notes sound very similar, and I was like, I don't, how good is this guy really? It's Jair Alexander. And,
Oh,
and we
okay.
saw how well that guy worked out because he
Yeah.
ended up going 18th overall to the Packers. And I remember at the time being like, that's way too early for him. Like, were they thinking it's solid second rounder? Sure. Lo and behold, I was wrong there. And I was trying to remember. I was like, there was a second Louisville DB that was really good too. Now this guy didn't quite pan out in the NFL, but also played in a similar style. And yes, I'm aware it's different coaches, but sometimes it's just the team culture. Calvin Pryor, very
Yeah, I
very
remember Calvin
similar. I
Pryor.
remember that, and so yeah, I mean, bottom line being is Louisville's produced a lot of NFL caliber. I'm not going to say good NFL talent, but NFL caliber talent
It's been
in the
hit and miss, yeah.
secondary over the past decade. And so, if this guy ends up being the next good sleeper out of the Cardinals produce, yeah, I could definitely see it. And just because of your suggestion, I'll be watching this tape this weekend.
Good idea. Good idea for sure. So that'll close out our defensive back episode. But yeah, like I said, we're right around the corner from the NFL draft happening. We got a couple more episodes with some draft content for you. But I mean, guys, if you need more content than what we're giving to you on the podcast and the YouTube videos, hit us up. Hit us up on those social media handles that are coming across your screen right now. Hit us up on Twitter. You got me at @TheSide23. You got Tad at TadSide94. You got the show handle at TheSide Guys. And of course, on Instagram, we're at TheSide Guys as well. So hit us up. Let us know, who do you want us to scout? What do you want us to look at for your team as far as their team needs? What sort of analysis that you're looking for? Because as much as we'd love to sort of give you as much content as we can throughout the episode, do like an episode probably every day if we could, but just unfortunately we can't afford to do that. So this is the other way that we could give you content. You let us know what you're looking for, and we will give you personalized content based on what you're asking for through social media. So, I mean, guys, don't be afraid to interact with us. And like we talked about at the top of the episode, when we do our live stream on next week, on Thursday as well as Friday for day 1 and day 2, interact with us then too. If you got questions as it's happening, that's just like, oh, hey, why is Quinyon Mitchell sliding? It's like we can sort of give you an answer as far as like, okay, I think we see some other teams. There's a trade. We'll give you our instant reaction on air live. So, I mean, guys, don't be afraid to interact with us then. But yeah, please continue to listen to our podcast. Subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels as well. And guys, please give support to our parent network at LAFB Network, because they're giving you a lot of great content as well. And first and foremost, without them, there would be no us. I mean, we give a lot of gratitude to them for giving us the opportunity to do this podcast. And they're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the Chargers and the Rams at the professional level, and the Bruins and the Trojans at the college level. So lots of fantastic content coming from them for all 4 of those LA football teams. And to everybody who's already supporting us by listening to the podcast, watching the videos, interacting with us on social media, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast, we can't thank you enough.
I just want to push the live stream just one more time. Is if you're thinking like, why do I want to watch you2 over Mel Kiper on ESPN, or is Mayock back at NFL Network?
I don't think so. I think, yeah, he's I don't know if they'll invite him back. I'm not sure. After what happened, yeah.
He gets to Las Vegas, he deserves to be just out of football. But whoever the hell is on NFL Network, if anyone is still left at NFL Network, is that too soon?
Yeah, they had some layoffs. That was tough too.
That felt a little too soon. That was a bit of a cheap shot. But point being is, yes, you can watch them, but you get the same old you get year after year. With us, you get the fun. It's like watching it with friends. Like I said, I literally stormed off the camera, off the quote unquote stage, off the set after the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson at 10:30 at night at pick whatever it was, 22. When the Los Angeles Chargers selected Quentin Johnson, I was yelling my head off. We have fun with it. There's jokes, there's trivia, there's more fun. It's like watching it with a bunch of friends. It's a more laid-back environment.
And I can guarantee that NFL Network or ESPN will never have a live cat cameo, but I can guarantee that there will be at least one on day 1 or day 2 for sure. If not more than that, but I can guarantee at least one.
It's going to be interesting. So, no, we just have a lot of fun with the live stream. So even if you just want to check in every now and then, just be like, if it's just one pick where, I want to see this reaction, go in and check. It's going to be
Yeah,
fun. It's
even if
going to
you
be
only want
great.
to check in like when your team is on the clock, like we'll be there to give you analysis. So that's the best time to ask questions right then. Just like, hey, who do you think this team is going to take? Or after the pick happens, just like, oh, what do you guys think about this pick fit here? Sort of thing. It's like we will give you reactions when only you're checking in for your team. So it's like if that's all you want to do, then that's fine too.
Exactly. So, guys, we want to have fun with you. We want to interact with you. So be sure to check in definitely over the next week or so because we have a lot of draft content dropping very, very soon, especially on those social media accounts, which again you can find below. And as always, everyone, like Mer said, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay safe, everyone.